Decisions.
Wait a minute. Are you still looking for cars on Carvana?
Yeah, decisions.
When I used Carvana, I found the exact car I was looking for in minutes. Bought it on the spot.
Electric or full diesel? Decisions.
Come on, you've been at it for weeks. Just buy it already.
You're right. Crossover it is. Decisions decided.
Whether you know exactly what you want or like to take your time, buy your car the convenient way with Carvana.
Bada boom, sold.
Huh?
Just sold my car on Carvana. Dropping it off and getting paid today.
Already?
What, you still haven't sold yours? You told me about it months ago. Is the offer good?
Oh, the offer's great.
Don't have another car yet?
I could trade it in for this car I love.
Come on, what are we waiting for?
You're right.
Let's go.
Whether you're looking to sell your car right now or just whenever feels right, go to Carvana.com and sell your car the convenient way. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, the show that looks at the money behind the music industry with me, Steve Lamack, and Music Ally's Head of Insight, Stuart Dredge. It's our final episode of the year, so a lot to power through. As it's the last one, Stuart, shall we cover off a couple of news stories, and then maybe try and answer a couple of listeners' questions, because I noticed we had a couple of festival-related queries about headliner fees and ticket sales, which I've been researching, so we could do those. But before that, some news then. Should we start with this? Virgin Music Group is buying Downtown Music Holdings in a deal that values Downtown at $775 million. Who are Downtown? I've just got Petula Clark's Downtown in my head. That's all.
So have I.
I've got nothing else, nothing to contribute. Who are Downtown? Why is this a big deal?
I mean, you could sing. That would be fun. No, this broke yesterday. I was having a conversation with my wife who was saying, surely the news will die down now. It will be slow because it's Christmas. Yeah. And literally at that second, this press release landed saying 700. So Downtown, they're one of the bigger independent music companies, even if they're not a household name maybe for fans so much. Right. But they own CD Baby, the distributor that a lot of artists use. Uh-huh. They're a big music publisher. They own Fuga, which is another company in distribution. They own a company called Song Trust, which collects royalties for songwriters. So they're big, but they're kind of, a lot of it is behind the scenes, sort of providing services for musicians and independent musicians. They're very big on independent music.
Okay.
So they're getting, or they're going to get bought, or they've been announced that they will get bought by Virgin Music Group, which is part of Universal Music. $775 million in cash. But they have to get the approval of regulators in Europe, in America. So they're not expected to actually close the deal until the second half of next year. And until then, it's going to carry on being two separate companies. And Virgin Music Group, I mean, weirdly, because I think of Virgin Music Group and I think, the Sex Pistols, Richard Branson, that era of Virgin Music being a label. But nowadays, it's the brand owned by Universal. And it's kind of their, and this will sound like a weird phrase to people, it's their independent music So it's the bit of Universal that does services for artists. It has distribution. It does all the stuff for independent artists who release their self-release stuff. And it's become quite a big thing for Universal over the last year. And now this.
Okay, and what's the reaction been to this? Because it is another example of a massive company buying out a smaller independent operation.
This is exactly it. There's been already this morning, there's been about 3 or 4 independent music bodies and companies giving some quite spicy quotes saying they don't like the idea. And like you say, major labels have been buying up independent distributors, independent companies. I think we talked about Universal and PS recently. Mm-hmm. Universal acquired PS, the famous independent label group. There's a really good quote. If you enjoy quotes with a story, Martin Mills from Beggars Group had a quote this morning saying, "The cynical use of the Virgin brand, once synonymous with independent entrepreneurship, should not hide the fact that this is about utter dominance and control." And he went on to say, "This is another step on the road of UMG's pretense to be the independent's fairy godmother, but there's a wolf under that cape."
Wow. Yeah.
Which it's quite a kind of evocative, isn't it? And Impala, who are the European indies body, have said it's another land grab, and we expect competition authorities in key jurisdictions to carry out thorough investigations and block these deals. And AIM in the UK has also said it's concerning a continuing trend of over-consolidation and reduction of independent routes to market. So that's kind of the point here. It's like it's not that any artist who, for example, releases music through CD Baby now will stop doing that or will suddenly be on a Universal deal that's different. But it's more the case that people in the indie sector are worried about there being fewer and fewer companies that aren't owned by majors, independent things. So it's kind of everyone's crossed today in that sector. For their part, Virgin Music Group were excited and saying this is going to be really important for us, going to help us serve artists better. They're very positive, as you'd expect. Mm-hmm. But there's now going to be several months of regulators looking at this. The independent bodies will be telling them, we think it's a bad idea. Universal will be saying, here's why we think it should go through. And we won't know until after June next year whether it's actually going to happen. Or there could even be, even if it's not blocked, they could say, well, actually, you have to sell some bits of it, like in the past, in this kind of deal. So, yeah, there's all to play for there, but it's the latest example of this kind of consolidation where independent music is now an increasingly big part of the majors' business too.
Yeah. Now, this appears to be something of an emerging trend. Artists filing legal claims against the record labels which they're signed to. This latest one, British rappers Bad Boy Chiller Crew have lodged a legal claim against their record label at the High Court. Tell us more.
Yeah, this is one of those bands when I start to feel really old because they were nominated for a Brit Award last year for Best Group. And I was like, who are Bad Boy Chiller Crew? I've not heard of them at all because they've been in my filter bubble. But for those who aren't aware, like me, they're a trio from Bradford. They began online. They had their own reality TV show on ITV2, which is a kind of a new way of breaking into the music industry. And they've released 4 hours of mixtapes, and they arrived at the Brits in a horse and carriage. So I like the cut of their jib. They've got a good sense of humour. And they've been signed to a label called House Anxiety since 2020. And they've put out 3 albums and mixtapes with them. But yeah, so they're taking action in the High Court, saying they're owed. They reckon it's about £400,000 in unpaid royalties, a mixture of kind of royalties that they haven't been paid, and also a licensing deal that was done with a subsidiary of Sony Music, and they say they won't be paid money from that.
Right.
And the band also say their contract with the label has ended, and with that in mind, they would try to release a new EP in June, not through the label, and had to take it down after the label said, no, it's a breach of contract. You are still signed to us. So there's been this dispute for a while now.
Right. Right.
I've got some quotes, and it's one of those ones we probably should read the quotes out, shouldn't we? So that each side is represented.
Yeah, I think so. I was about to say, what are the labels saying? But give us both sides of the story then.
Yeah, so the group told the BBC, like our other bands, we don't look for litigation, but when faced with a label that won't let us put our own music out ourselves for our fans and not pay us royalties over our music, we felt we had no other option. But House Anxiety's founder, Jamie Hodgson, disagrees. He said, we totally refute these claims and welcome the opportunity to clarify these inaccuracies. And he said, as an artist-friendly independent label, we remain hugely proud of every element of Full Whack No Breaks, which is their album that broke through, and all the hard work that went into its campaign, then stepping aside to allow BBCC to pursue their dreams of being a major label artist. There'll be no further comment at this time. So it does seem like they've fallen out over stuff, including what the contract involves and if it's still signed. And now this litigation concerns whether the band's been paid what they think they should have been paid. And the High Court will have to decide. So yeah, it's a shame, really. I mean, it's like you say, it's kind of a trend. A great number of artists are kind of looking at the books and looking at what they've been paid and saying, hang on, I don't think it's right. And taking that further. So not the first, not the last, I think we'll see.
Here's a story which actually there's more behind this than if this comes across as sounding like this might be quite dry. Don't worry, because as I say, there's more to this than meets the eye. The UK government has launched a consultation on plans to give certainty to the creative industries on how copyrighted material can be used to train AI models. This is an ongoing, obviously, discussion around AI and what you can use, which artist music, what you pay to use an artist, what you pay to an artist to use their music to train your AI. So this has been going on for ages, but there's new consultation, good thing or a bad thing? You'd imagine the record industry would be applauding this, but
exactly that. So I mean, this has been announced just half an hour ago as we're recording, so stuff's still coming on in it. But yeah, I mean, it's the government saying, look, we think we need to sort out AI and copyright so that everyone knows where they stand, so that the music industry gets paid, and so that AI companies know what they can use to trade and what they can't. So this consultation, the government wants the views of the industry and AI companies and individuals too, but it's got some new ideas it wants to put in front of them first, and that's what it's done this morning.
Right.
So to summarise it as undryly as possible, but I'll rely on your face to tell me if it's really dry.
Okay.
So it would introduce something that's called an exception to copyright law covering AI training for commercial purposes. So that is basically saying it would carve out from the copyright laws that already exist. You can use commercial music to train your AI if you want.
Right.
But the key point is rights holders will be able to reserve their rights, which basically means they could say, no, you can't use our stuff unless you sign a licensing deal, and that would be respected.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense so far. Not too dry. Basic facts,
good.
All good.
Okay, and it would have some rules forcing AI companies to be transparent about what they've used, so that you could check on that and check on not using anything. And there's a quote from Lisa Nandy, who's the Culture, Media and Sports Secretary, saying, and this sounds like a really good thing, the government firmly believes that our musicians, writers, artists and other creatives, because this covers everything, not just music, it's every kind of creative art form, should have the ability to know and control how their content is used by AI firms and be able to seek licensing deals and fair payment, which is what the music industry has been asking for, like you say. But then I got this, the BPI, the labels body, put out their statement on it. And Dr. Jo Twist, who we interviewed on the pod a few months ago, she's the CEO, she said, we look forward to engaging with the detail of the government's proposals, and we welcome elements to improve transparency, record keeping, and the objective of developing licensing models. But, and here's where the but comes, it remains our firm view that an exception to copyright law for AI training with rights reservation would be hugely damaging to our national interest. And in fact, we believe it would further disincentivize tech companies from doing so, from getting licensing. So the BPI is saying, we don't think this idea of you can use what you want unless your rights are reserved, they don't like that. They think that's a bad idea. They want to be, you can't use anything unless you've signed a deal.
Right.
So it's kind of more controversial than it sounded. Like the quotes in the government's press release were like, great, musicians should get paid. It needs to be fair. And the labels body at least is like, we don't like the idea, but that's the whole point of a consultation, is they get to kind of go and make that case now. So it's not set in stone what's going to happen, but the other thing, actually, go on.
No, I was just about to say, on the subject of consultations, there are an awful lot of consultations going on at government at the moment, aren't they? They're consulting on everything, it seems. I spoke to some political lobbyists last week who said they are wading through brand new consultations, which are ongoing at the moment. But anyway, it's another one. They're obviously trying to find the root cause of various problems and looking for solutions to them. But there's a lot of chat going on.
There is, and it's 10 weeks at least, so it's kind of capped. It's not going to be last for. I mean, the other thing this morning is I got a press release from the Council of Music Makers, who they represent musicians, producers, managers. And they put out a statement, again, they've said this before, and we've talked about it before, reminding labels and publishers that consent should go two ways. And they said explicit consent should always be secured from music makers. And when licensing deals are done between the music industry and AI companies, all music makers must be fairly remunerated. So we've got the BPI saying we don't like what the government is suggesting. And then we've got the body representing music makers saying we still don't trust the labels and the publishers to pay us fairly if they do strike deals.
Yeah.
So I think this consultation is going to see some more of that argument going on as well between the music industry itself, as well as it arguing against what the government's doing. So it could be quite fun.
Yeah, I think the position of the artists is they're now at the point, aren't they, where they are determinedly going to make a stand because of the apparent failure of the streaming inquiry to alter the dial in any way in which, in regards to how they get paid and the money that they get paid through streaming. So I think they will be, I think, more and more vocal next year, the artists and the artist bodies. We've got one more story for today. I was going to say this is the competition. Is it? Apple Music Radio is expanding. Tell us about this. I mean, because Beats, the old Apple radio station, launched to a great fanfare, didn't it? It must be about a decade ago now. It was later rebranded Apple Radio. I don't think it's made a huge impact here, but maybe you can tell us more about this planned expansion.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things in a very Apple way that no one knows. They don't announce listening figures. They don't, there's no stats. I'm not even sure they do the Rajar thing that most of the radio stations in the country do they? So right from the start, it's one of the things that Apple Music has always had that's different is it has live radio. They built these studios, didn't they, in London, I think, and in California and somewhere else. And they had round-the-clock radio. And they started with one station, then they added a hit station and a country station over time.
Mm-hmm.
And now 3 more. And one of them, so there's Apple Music Club, which is dance mixes, and Apple Music Chill, which is kind of chill-out music round the clock. And Apple Musica Uno, which is the most interesting, which is kind of Latin music, which has had a real huge surge over last year. So now they've got these 6 stations. It's like a real radio network now. And they're going to have famous artists hosting shows. So they've got Becky G is one of the ones from Musica Uno. She's a very big Latin American artist. Brian Eno is doing Chill, which if you're going to get a DJ to do your, a show on a chill out station, I think Brian Eno is probably top of the list, isn't he?
Yeah.
And there was a pitch from Zane Lowe because I think he is the front man now for a lot of Apple Music stuff. And he said, in a world of AI and algorithms, Apple Music Radio, I can't do his voice. Apple Music Radio is live. It's real people. It's a shared event. Which kind of is what Apple are trying to remind everyone of. They've always had this little element to the way they speak about themselves. Like, we're people, we're not algorithms. Even though they do have algorithms doing all their playlists, so it's kind of Apple reminding everyone we have live people talking live. And weirdly, because I know Zane Lowe is someone he's a Marmite character, isn't he? But that idea of radio being a shared event, that is still the thing that makes me listen to radio. Like the sense of you're listening together to something at the same time. So I get the pitch, but yeah, I have no idea how popular Apple Music Radio is. All the shows it has are also released on Apple Music to listen to on demand and Apple Podcasts. So, they find listeners in different ways.
I'm just amazed that they missed a trick. If they've got a radio station called Uno, that they didn't call the chill out radio station Eno. You could just I mean, would have made sense.
Uno, Eno, yeah. But
you can have that for free. Apple marketing.
It's weird, but like you say, I mean, I don't know what. I mean, I don't know. There's announcements every so often about new shows on Apple Music Radio, but yeah, I honestly don't know how people listen to them. How people are. They could be really huge and no one knows, or they could be really tiny and no one knows. Literally, no one does know, do they? But it sounds like the radio industry isn't. Well, I suppose when it launched, there was a big hoo-ha, wasn't there? Is this going to?
I think when at its initial launch, because Apple being the all-powerful Apple, I think people were worried that the music industry would give all their exclusive first plays to Apple in return for having a high profile on the front page of, the pages where they were selling loads of downloads. Do you see what I mean? So a new album would be coming out in return for this album being heavily plugged throughout. Wherever you go on the Apple sites, you will see this album, prominently being plugged. And in return for that, all the music would end up on Apple Radio. And that didn't happen. It for a while, everyone was giving music to Apple, saying to, traditional old radio stations, you come second and third now when it comes to us giving you the new single by X major artist. Then it went away again, really. And as you say, the big thing is no one knows who's listening, but the industry doesn't talk about it in terms of it having a huge influence. Otherwise, they wouldn't still be the major labels. They wouldn't still be, very interested in getting a record on Radio 1's playlist or Radio 2. So I don't think it's had a huge impact. I mean, there are obviously good shows, aren't there, here and there, and some of the new music shows are interesting. But
the Elton John one was really good because Elton John is famously really into discovering new music, isn't he? And his show.
But that comes down to the fact that people are interested in Elton John rather than being interested in Apple Radio, going to Apple Radio because Apple Radio is providing something that people want to listen to. No, they just want to listen to Elton John. I think that's the difference.
It's an interesting trend, isn't it? Because you've got, I mean, you know all about Six Music. They've got Iggy Pop, they've got Guy Garvey, Keris, artists doing shows. I think Sirius XM in the States has gone down that route as well. And Apple Music, if you're an interesting artist with stories to tell, you can be a radio DJ now. And some of them, some of them must have not worked. I would love to hear the ones where they got an artist in to kind of do a show and they were terrible and this never heard the light of day. But I quite like that trend of artists being able to talk about the stuff they love and play it, So yeah, a bit more of that here, but not the only person doing it.
We have one more act for you this evening. I don't even need to say his name. Mr. Bob Dylan.
From the director of Walk the Line and Ford vs. Ferrari.
If anyone is going to hold your attention on stage, you have to kind of be a freak.
And starring Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan.
Are you a freak?
Hope so.
Once upon a time, you're just so fine.
Inspired by the true story.
I want to know which side he's on.
This Christmas.
They just want me singing Blowing in the Wind for the rest of my life.
Bobby, what do you want to be?
Whatever it is they don't want me to be.
He defied everyone.
Turn it down!
Play loud!
To change everything.
He's our Elvis.
With no direction.
Timothée Chalamet, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro.
Make some noise, BD. Track some mud on the carpet.
A complete unknown. Only in theaters Christmas Day. Rated R. Under 17 and admitted without parent.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the new generative AI assistant from AWS. Many tasks can make business slow, like wading through mud. Help! Luckily, there's a faster, easier, less messy choice. Amazon Q can securely understand your business data to help you streamline tasks, like summarizing quarterly results or doing complex analyses in no time. Q got this. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
Okay, that's news for this week. A couple of listeners' questions. Actually, just before we tackle these questions about festivals, one clarification which we need to make, which regarding a question from our last episode, Stuart.
Yeah, so I put my dance cap on for this bit because I made a mistake. So yeah, we were talking about how artists get paid for radio and TV plays last week, and I was talking about featured artists and non-featured artists. And so the latter just get a one-off fee for their session and no airplay royalties. And then the very nice John at PPL got in touch politely and said, that's completely wrong.
Right.
So non-featured session musicians do get airplay royalties when every time a track is played. And there's actually a section on the PPL website called Who Can Join as a Performer, where it tells you exactly how you can make a claim through their portal to be added to the performer lineup on a recording. Right. So I did this, I did backing vocals. It's generally got to be an audible contribution is a general rule. That's kind of... and you get royalties. And I got their list, the list of things you can register that you played on a recording in an audible way to get royalties.
Okay.
And it's like a big list of brass instruments, electronics, keyboards, vocals, and so on. There's a miscellaneous list. So you can say, I did animal sounds on a record. I did broom, which I can only assume is some kind of sweeping. Clog dancer, kazoo, one-man band, and siren. So if you did one or more of those things and you haven't registered, you should be getting airplay royalties. I mean, it's given me a sense of how I could have a musical career because I could play a siren. I could go into a track and you press a siren at the right moment and then get some royalties for it.
I mean, I'd say I could do the broom, but then even the broom's got to have some rhythm to it. You can't just make a broom sound. Unless you're banging, no, even if you're banging it, you've got to be in time, haven't you? You've got to sweep in time.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that's not.
Paul McCartney who did chewed celery on a Super Furry Animals track famously. I think
true?
It is. They got McCartney in chewing celery.
Oh, come on. This is from your COVID fever dream, this, surely.
It's not. I'm going to Google it right now. Well, everyone can look it up. Super Furry Animals, celery, right. McCartney.
Right. Okay.
And I think what they'll find is, they collaborated with 2001 track, and they even shared the minute-long isolated take of his celery solo. So thank you, John at PPL. That's I was completely wrong last week, and
I mean, and to be fair, it's not often. We've been doing this for nearly a year now, and I think it's one of the only times we've come a cropper. But get in touch if you have more information about anything we cover or any other insights or clarifications. We would be most grateful. This week's questions, so both festival related. The first is from Bob Bright, who says, should we be concerned that music festivals will be able to continue in the future? Because there seems to be a lot of cancellations and postponements of late. I was talking, says Bob, to someone involved in a smallish local festival in Hertfordshire and was very surprised by the amounts paid to the headline artists. brackets, £100,000 each. They said the amounts paid are really making it very difficult to fill the lineup. And, if the artists charge so much, says Bob, will there be any festivals left for them to play? So it's an interesting point as it goes. It takes us back to the very early days of this podcast when the subject of festivals came up one or two times. We made the point then that a large proportion of a festival budget these days goes on paying the headliners, because obviously they're the ultimate draw. They're what people are looking at when they're deciding which festivals to go to. You naturally sort of look at who the big names are. Having said that, of course, there'll be a proportion of the audience as well who are more interested in the undercard and who else is on across the weekend. It sort of depends on what sort of music fan you are as to how you judge a festival lineup. But anyway, we sought some expert advice on this, Bob, including from Tim Cleesby, who runs Tramlines Festival in Sheffield, who have Pulp as one of their headliners next year, which will be a big moment in Tramlines history, as you'll appreciate if you listened to our interview with Tim, which we did a few months back, when he gave us this really very insightful look into how you run a festival these days. If you missed it, or any of the past episodes, but the one with Tim on, you'll find them all on our feed. It's worth a listen. But anyway, Tim says, great question, Bob, and one that most festivals can identify with. The cost of everything has risen dramatically in recent years, not just artist fees. And I'm sure artists, they're feeling the impact of rising touring costs as well, says Tim. But to add to our own problems, there's the impact of COVID, Brexit, the cost of living crisis, all have had an impact on costs across the festival sector. We've seen an incredible amount of festivals vanish, and I agree that there is a risk that the pool of festivals will dwindle, says Tim. And this is true, isn't it? We are seeing we are seeing the impact of the price rises, as Tim says, across the board for all the things that you have to put into a festival production. Everything from the cost of hiring a toilet to bringing in a PA, possibly from across from Europe. All these things have skyrocketed. It's a challenging time, I think, for festivals at the moment. So there's the problems with the financing. Tim goes on to say also, securing any sort of lineup is very challenging, but it is for many reasons, not just the cost. There's artist availability. You've got to make sure the touring schedules line up. So you've got to hope that someone's on tour around the time that you're putting on your festival. Then there's exclusivity deals as well, which you have to take into account, where certain bands or artists will agree to do one festival and one festival only. So add all these things together, and the headlining fees have risen, says Tim, certainly for us, although sometimes that's because we're booking bigger artists, but sometimes it's just the cost of the artist fee increasing by the year. But there is, says Tim, there's another element to this though as well, which is that we're not seeing as many new artists breaking through and becoming big enough to headline a festival. So if the pool of festival headliners is quite small, then they can charge almost what they want because there's no competition in a way. I think that's the thing. Tim goes on to say, this is why we nurture future headliners. We've had the Raytons play, a few times over the years, and this year they are now at the point where they can headline on the Saturday night. But anyway, there's a few reasons. I've also, after Tim, I got in touch with John Rostron. John is the CEO of the AIF, that's the Association of Independent Festivals. So this is the organisation which represents indie festivals across the country. And he told me that, and I quote, artist fees are one of the most talked about issues facing festival promoters and amongst festival promoters at the moment. And he said, obviously, look, promoters absolutely understand that artist costs have risen in the same way that our production costs have risen. And, we recognise that live music is a big part of how artists get paid. However, it's pretty clear that from anyone who's had sight across a lot of festival budgets, it's clear that top-line artist fees are, and I quote, crippling festivals. Put simply, says John, if they were to reduce those fees by 10%, it's been argued that they could save many festivals from falling. And if you want proof of this, John told us that, in terms of where we're up to with festivals that aren't coming back, the total number of festivals that won't be returning next year, so the number of festivals we've lost in 2024 now stands at 78. 78
Christ.
Festivals down, which, I mean, this is, because even if you argued that, say, going back a few years, maybe just before COVID, even if you could argue that the summer was oversaturated with events, that figure indicates, I think, to me, that we've gone way past a kind of commercial rebalancing of supply and demand for festivals. We're now at the point where, popular festivals are just really struggling to stay afloat. Which I think, I don't know what you think, but I think this is a theme which is going to come back again to haunt us next year, I think.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because, like you say, it's about, it shouldn't be. It's not festivals against artists. It's not. But these two sides work together. That's perfect.
Yeah.
But it made me think. Do you remember? It was Secret Garden Party this year, I think, that announced they'd have no headliners, didn't they? And that was they took a approach saying, and I think there's a quote like, "Why allocate a massive budget to one or two headliners when it could fuel another 50 outstanding acts?" And I wonder if we'll see some. I guess to do that, you have to be the kind of festival where you have a reputation that isn't just about the bands you book, the acts you book, isn't it? You have to have a festival people want to come to for the culture around it, for the things that, and they don't really mind who you book because they sort of trust you to book stuff they will love. So I wonder if that will happen more. Maybe some festivals say, look, we can't carry on paying more and more for headliners. We'll spend the money elsewhere and on smaller acts. And maybe that could be, in a way, good for some of those up and coming artists, because they'll get to play at bigger stages and they'll get a bit more money.
I love the fact that you find a positive in everything.
No, I mean, I agree with you. Like, I agree with you in the kind of, I think people can sometimes say, well, it's just sorting out the wheat from the chaff, isn't it? And things that are going out of business were not well run. And I think with festivals, I think we're losing good, popular, long-standing events. And I think I agree with you. I think it's a moment of real. We need to do something now rather than just say, oh, isn't it sad?
This is a question from Will Hughes. I'm interested, says Will, in the process and politics of announcing festival lineups. How early do festivals know their full lineup? Do some artists insist on being announced individually? And do festivals announce their lineup at a certain time to maximise ticket sales? Will, thank you very much for this. I mean, yes. I think that's yes, no, and yes are the answers to your questions. But yeah, certainly it's an interesting one about timing of putting tickets on sale. We'll get to that in a sec. Let's do the other bit first, though. The timeline of when artists are confirmed. This, again, in the words of the experts, John Roston says, as a rule of thumb, booking of headliners starts pretty much as the current festival finishes. So they're a whole year ahead. As a festival is taking place, they're already, the festival promoters, thinking, who are we going to get next year? In fact, John adds, some larger events will be booking more than a year ahead. So a festival like, just pick one out. Well, let's use Glastonbury. If you were Glastonbury, you might even be thinking about who's going to be headlining the following year, even before you've got to this summer. And John says, booking has changed a lot in recent years. There's been an acceleration for all kinds of reasons towards having all headliners announced and out in the public, along with a big part of the lineup by at the latest end of November. And that's true. I think we've mentioned this before, that the festivals are going on sale. They feel like they're going on sale earlier, or at least they're announcing their lineups earlier.
Well, the early bird tickets often start the day after the last one finished. I've seen quite a few of them.
This is true. Actually, this is a point we'll get to in a second about ticket sales. But John says, if you have a look this year, just in terms of announcements, Bloodstock were fully announced and sold out by early autumn, and Kendall Calling did the same and has sold out in record time. So good that they've sold the tickets. Elsewhere, there are a couple of key moments for announcements. So the first is just what you said: early bird tickets. these are tickets which go on sale within a month of the festival taking place. The tickets are on sale for the next year's festival. Many festivals actually have the tickets on sale at the festival while you're there. But I didn't realise how important that early bird ticket is. I thought the pickup would be 10%, maybe.
The hardcore, yeah.
Something like that. But John says, so the early birds, when it comes to at least independent events, they sell the largest quantity of tickets. Green Man, for example, sold out entirely on one day, and many similar long-standing festivals or festivals that are members of the AIF might sell, get this, between 50 and 70% of their tickets in the early bird window.
Wow.
Which
I guess that's a lot of people do that. A lot of people go to Green Man every year, don't they? So I guess it's like booking a holiday. You book up early and you know you're going. You've got it to look forward to.
So the key moments are early bird tickets, and then when you announce the headliners, there'll be another spike of sales. Then you try and do another push in January, maybe add some more acts or announce a different stage or a different area of entertainment, and then apparently ticket sales go quite quiet until you get to around April, May, when people start thinking about festivals again. As for this question about bands wanting to be announced individually, I mean, it does happen occasionally, but mostly if an artist wants to announce all their dates for the summer in one go,
of course, yeah.
So they want to let people know where you'll be able to see them. And there probably will be some discussion between a headliner and a festival, but mostly, usually it's in the hands of the individual festival who'll make the announcement. And we spoke to Mr. Cleesby about this as well, and he said, I don't think we've ever announced any artists in isolation because we're a music festival, not a standalone show. And, it's the whole lineup that plays a part in people coming along. As for booking, just to clear this one up, Tim says generally we start talking to and thinking about headliners anywhere from 11 to 15 months ahead of the festival taking place. I imagine that Pulp conversation, for instance, has been going on for quite some time. And on the ticket sales, Tim says, yes, 2 main peaks of sales. One, when we first go on sale, and 2, when the lineup is announced, when we put the full, or the headline announcement up, that's another spike in sales. The timing of this, says Tim, is governed by lots of factors, but you have to really think it through because the timing's all important. For instance, says Tim, if you announce too close to Christmas, you get lost in the buzz of Christmas. If you announce too early in the new year, no one's got any money left after Christmas to spend on your tickets. So you have to think where in the calendar you're going to put your announcement, as you were saying, Will, to maximise your ticket. So I think what Tim is saying is it's a science. That's what it is. It's a science.
That's it.
Not for amateurs like us. It's a science.
It's interesting because I think you must have to think about getting out the way of Glastonbury, for example.
Yeah,
because that's but then maybe announcing in the day or weeks after Glastonbury is sold out, and everyone's who wanted to go and can't go is going, well, I want to go somewhere.
Yeah,
so there must become some windows that based on other festivals announcements as well. So it must be quite a juggling act.
Yeah. I mean, it was coming back to August and all the bands and some of those one-day festivals which are happening next year who were all having heard some rumour of a big Oasis announcement. We're all going, well, we can't announce next week because it might be the Oasis announcement. And there were tours that weren't announced for weeks because everyone was thinking, what is this? Can we not? Are they going to announce? So they were just on hold for ages. But anyway, there you go. And thank you very much to our industry friends. Thank you, Tim. And thank you, John, for your help with that. And thanks for your questions. Keep them coming. There'll be more answers in the new year. thepriceofmusicpodcast at gmail.com is the address if you'd like to get in touch. And if you'd like to support the show, please subscribe to us in your podcast app and give us a review if you get a second. You can also, in this season of goodwill, put a small financial contribution our way by signing up to be a Price of Music fan or super fan for as little as £2 a month. Details at patreon.com/thepriceofmusic from both of us. thank you very much for listening in 2024 and all your kind comments about the show. We'll be back next year. Have a very happy Christmas. Take care of yourselves. Cheerio.